there folks, Tim Slade here. Welcome to today's how-to workshop where we're going to be focusing on how to use PowerPoint for graphic design. And as with all of our how-to workshops, these are designed to help you build your skills in practical ways, to help you design better e-learning and be a better instructional designer. Now, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, make sure to click that like, subscribe, and that bell button so that you can get alerted the next time I publish a video just like this one. Now, I don't know if this is true for everybody else. You'll have to let me know now. You'll have to let me know down in the comments. But you know, if you spend any amount of time online, you've probably seen some folks poo-poo on the use of PowerPoint, not just as a presentation tool, but especially as a graphic design tool. There's this idea that you should be using professional grade tools, only professional grade tools, if you want to create graphics for your e-learning courses or anything else that you might be creating. But here's the truth about that. Nobody in this industry emerged from their mother's wombs with the ability to use Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop from day one. I promise you that they probably started using PowerPoint before they started using more advanced tools. And it's because of that that I believe that the best graphic design tool is the one that you know how to use and the one that you have access to. And if that's PowerPoint, well, great. Because here's the good news. About 90% of the stuff you need to be able to do, or you might want to do in, say, Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, you could probably do in PowerPoint. And I'm going to show you some examples of that here today. And that doesn't mean that you can't work towards more advanced tools like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, but you can learn a lot about good graphic design techniques just directly in PowerPoint. So let's jump into PowerPoint here. Here we are in PowerPoint. Now, I should mention I am using the most current version of Microsoft PowerPoint through Office 365. So I use the subscription version of PowerPoint. So I have all of the latest and greatest features. There might be some things that I show that may not work on whatever version of PowerPoint that you may be using. Let's say if you're using, I don't know, PowerPoint 2003 from, 20 years ago. Not everything I'm going to show is going to work there, but if you're using a current modern version of PowerPoint, you'll be just fine. And most of what I'll show works both in PowerPoint on Windows computers and on Mac computers. So if you have any concerns about that, don't worry about that. Most of the features are cross-compatible between those two platforms. Okay, so let's take a look at PowerPoint. Now, when you first open up PowerPoint, this is what you see. We've all seen this before, right? A million times before. And the thing about PowerPoint is that I think there's two different ways people look at and view PowerPoint. There's one camp of folks who view PowerPoint as a presentation tool used to shove bullet points down the throats of your learners, your audience, and yeah, that exists, right? But when you look at something like this, you have a placeholder for some text, a placeholder for a subtitle, right? And if I add a new slide here, we have a placeholder where we add a bunch of bullet points, right? There are some folks who view this as the constraints that they have to work within, right? And it doesn't mean that you can't make this look better. I mean, there's a lot you can do from the design tab, or you can download a template, right? But I like to view PowerPoint as a blank canvas, right? It's a blank canvas for you to create and design anything that you want to create. And if I delete the slide here, I'll go ahead and right click and delete the slide. And if you delete these placeholders, which I always do when I'm using PowerPoint, this blank canvas, this white slide space here, is no different than the blank canvas you would have in Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop. All right, so start reframing your mind about what this space is, because it's a graphic design tool at the end of the day. It really, truly is. So I'm going to show you a bunch of different stuff that you can do in PowerPoint. So feel free to pause this video at any time if you need to go back and watch how I did something. And of course, check out the timestamps down in the description where you can see and jump to a specific part of the video. Now, the first set of things that I want to show you that you can do in PowerPoint is how you can use PowerPoint as a simple image editing tool, and how you can do a lot of the common things you might want to do, let's say, in Photoshop in PowerPoint. Now, there's a lot of different places you can find images, whether they're images that you've taken yourself or images off of the web. I love to use some of the stock photos that are already provided for me in PowerPoint. So if I go to the Insert tab here and I click on the Pictures dropdown, you'll notice that there is an option for stock images. It might also be located somewhere else in the ribbon. Sometimes they move it around. And again, if you're using, let's say, Office 365, and you click on this, you're going to have access to all sorts of online images, including icons, cutout people, stickers, videos, illustrations, cartoon people, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm going to show you here later. But what I like about this is that built into PowerPoint are literally millions and millions of stock photos that you can use in your projects, and they're really nice, high-quality images. Let's say if I were to search, team meeting, for example, and you're going to see all of these really great images. Not all of them are equally beautiful in terms of their quality, but you're going to find images that are modern, look like real people doing real things in real office environments, and have diversity, which is incredibly important. That's something that, if you go back 10 years ago, there was a lot of stock images, stock photo sites that didn't have diversity, right? And so I'm just going to insert a bunch of images here. I like this image here. I'll go ahead and insert that. Let's also insert, we'll insert this one. And let's find one like, let's do this guy here. I like this one here, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and insert those images. And it'll take a moment to download them. They're high quality images, which is nice, but it takes a moment to download. And it's gonna throw them all here on my slide. Okay, so we have a bunch of images. Now, another place while we're talking about images where I like to get images from are pexels.com. So pexels.com is another great place where you can find free, high-quality images that you can use in your projects or just about anything. And what I like about these images are the fact that they have the Creative Commons 0 license. And what that means is that you can use them however you want. You don't have to provide attribution. They're just made available to the world for you to use. So let's do something like computer, right? And you can see, again, there's a lot of high quality stock photos. And you can get really creative with these, right? So let's say, actually, let's do this. I want to search for office because I want to do something with an office background that you'll see here in a moment. Let's do, there's one that I always like choosing. I like this one here. Let's do this one. Okay, I'm just going to copy this. I'll do copy image, go to PowerPoint, and let's paste it in. Now, when you're working with a bunch of images, a single image or multiple images, one of the things, regardless of what you might be creating, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation or an e-learning course in a program like Storyline or Captivate or whatever, you want your images to look like they're from the same image family. That's my number one tip when it comes to working with images, is that they're from the same image family, or at least they look like they are. And what that means is that they have the same kind of lighting, same kind of exposure. They just look consistent, right? It's hard when you're mixing and matching images. You can end up with a quick hodgepodge of images. So I'm going to show you some tips for editing images that might help you make them be more consistent. Or maybe you have photos you've taken at home, right, on your smartphone, and you just want to edit them before you post them. You can do some basic image editing with color and contrast and removing backgrounds and all sorts of other cool stuff. The first thing I want to do is I want to resize my images. Now, this is the first thing that it might seem really, really simple, but I promise you I can't tell you how often I see people do this, and it just makes me die inside. A little part of me just crumbles whenever I see this. And what it is when people resize images from the edges. Have you ever seen this where people are like, look at me, I'm resizing the image? No, you're not resizing the images. You are destroying those images like a savage. Don't do that. A better way of resizing images, and I'll undo that, is by resizing from the corner. Always resize from the corner. Why? Because it maintains the aspect ratio, and you're not going to run into issues with the image being scrunched or distorted. And of course, we'll talk about in a moment how to crop your images if you don't need all of that image space. So I'm going to go ahead and resize these and make them a little bit smaller. And we're going to play around with some of these to show you how you can edit your images to create different effects. So I'm going to move this here. Let me make this smaller, put him here. We'll make this one smaller and this one smaller. Again, resizing from the corner, not doing resizing from the edge. That is a no-no. Okay, so we have photos here, right? They're all a little bit different, but there's a lot of different things that we can do to make them look like they're from the same image family. So I'm going to go ahead and select this image here. And anytime you select an image or any object in PowerPoint, you get this picture format tab up here. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And this is where we can do all sorts of interesting edits to our image. And the big thing to keep in mind is just because you can doesn't mean you should. There's a lot of things that you can do in here to edit your images, but it doesn't mean that you should do it. Let me give you a great example. Like if I go to, let's see here, artistic effects here. There's some interesting artistic effects, and a lot of these artistic effects exist in Photoshop as well. But, you know, I can't imagine a time where I might want to make my image look like that. Maybe there's some specific reason, but 9 times out of 10, you don't need that. So let me undo that, okay? But what you can do here is you can do some color correction here. You can adjust the sharpness, the softness. You can also do brightness, contrast. You can adjust the color. You can do transparency. You can do all sorts of really interesting things to enhance your images. What I like to do personally is rather than using these different drop downs, I like to just do my picture correction options, which essentially puts everything into one sidebar. Think of it like what you would have in Photoshop with a sidebar with all of your controls, right? So if you needed to adjust the brightness or contrast, you have options here to do that. There are the presets, but you can do it, you know, just by adjusting these. So if I need to make that brighter, you see how it's getting brighter there on the screen? It looks more consistent with these. Let's do the same thing with this one. Let's make this one a little bit brighter. Maybe reduce the contrast on it. Same thing with this one. This one, maybe we'll make it like that, make it brighter. It's these subtle little adjustments. You may not be even seeing what's happening there, but it's making them look and feel a bit more consistent, right? So you can do some photo enhancements with that. You can even increase the sharpness. So if I were to increase this, let's do something dramatic. I'm gonna just click here in the middle. Oh, it's just doing 1%. Let's use this. It's gonna be hard to see it there. Did it by 50%. It gets a little sharper. You can also make it blurrier. If I bring this down, it'll soften the image. And it takes, depending on the size of the image, it can take a little minute to process. There we go. You can see it's a little bit blurred out there, right? I don't need that now, so I'm just going to set that back to 0. All right. Now, picture color correction. There are some color correction options here. Same thing with up here with the color options. The only ones that I really ever play around with are the saturation. The color tone, you're going to see as I hover over it, you know, it makes the image more blue. It makes the temperature higher. That's going to give you those like Instagram style filters, which aren't really popular anymore. And then we also have the recolor options here. You can recolor the photo, make it sepia, make it grayscale, make it black and white, like you see here, make it gray. I typically don't use those, but you can play around with those. What I do like to play around with is the color saturation. So one of the things you can do is, let's say you have several images and you want to make them look consistent. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these. One quick way to do that is to go to the color option and maybe make them black and white, right? That's going to quickly make all of your images be consistent. And again, you can still then play around with the different options to you know, change the intensity of the black and white, right? So you want something more dramatic, you know, you can select something like this with the brightness and contrast, right? And again, you can edit your own personal images in that way. One of the other things I like to do is I like to blur out my images. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these two images here. Actually, let me keep those. What I want to show you before I show you blurring out the images are some of the other picture styles. Again, just because you can doesn't mean you should, but you do have a lot of options here for the picture styles. And these are frames that you can apply to your images. I'll just do it with these two images here. What I do oftentimes is if I'm doing anything with this, I might use this one here. I don't know what to call it. I call it like a snapshot photo. It gives you this kind of cool, you know, 3D effect with a drop shadow. And if you play around with the rotation of them, you can create, you know, some interesting layouts where it looks like they're literally like snapshots, right? Now, what's cool is anything that you do to an image, whatever edits you might make to an image. Let's say I want to save this image here, right? And use in a different program, like Storyline. You can right click on the image and save as picture. And I'll save this as my picture. And I'm going to save this as a JPEG. No, sorry, not a JPEG, a PNG, portable network graphic, whatever the heck that means, right? Let me save that to my desktop. PNGs, what's great about PNGs is that they have transparent backgrounds. So if I minimize this and I find my image here, here's my image. And it's going to have that transparent background. And so what's great about that is if I want to, I can use that in Storyline. So I can go insert my picture from file, and I will go to my desktop, and there it is, and I'll insert it. and I can use this image within my project, all right? And you can even see that shadow is transparent, which is super cool. So let's say, for example, I were layering different shapes here, and I'll put this, like that, hypothetically, right? And I'm gonna bring this to the front, like that. You can see it gives that transparency. So you can edit images in that way and use them in your other projects, all right? I don't need that right now, so I'm gonna delete these from Storyline. We'll be coming back to Storyline here in a little bit. Let's go back to PowerPoint. Okay, so we talked about some of the color correction options, some of the effects that you can apply. Now, let's talk about blurring images. This is another common thing that I like doing in PowerPoint versus, say, Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, because those take a little bit longer and are more complicated to use. One of the things I wish was available in Storyline, and I don't know if it's available in Captivate, is the ability to blur an image, and you don't have that feature. So what I will oftentimes do is I will use PowerPoint to blur my images. So let's say, for example, I wanted to use this image as a background on a slide. Now, when you use images as a full background on a slide, it's a little bit tricky, because what you don't want to have is you don't want to have a bunch of clear and crisp stuff in the background and clear and crisp stuff in the foreground. Let me give you an example. If I make this image bigger, you can see, let me move this guy out of the way. We can see there's clear delineation between him in the foreground and this in the background. That's called depth of focus, right? And that's because the background is blurred out. So I kind of want to create that effect, but with this image here. So anytime you're using a full image background, it's probably a good idea to blur it out in some way. So I'm going to make this much smaller, and let's move him out of the way. We'll come back to him. I'm going to do something cool here with him. Just move him off the slide if I can. Let's close this guy here. Move them over there. I'm going to zoom out here. And what I want to do is I want to use this image as the full image background. So let's make it bigger first, dragging from the corner. I'm going to position it here. Let's go over this way. Position it right here in the corner. And let's make it bigger, and it's a perfect 16:9 image, which is fantastic. Very good. I could have cropped it. I'll show you cropping here in a moment. But let's make this blurred out. So I'm going to do my picture format, and we have artistic effects here. And there's a lot of those different artistic effects I showed you earlier. I'm just going to go to artistic effect options here. And again, depending on the quality of the image, it might take a little bit longer to apply the effect. Before I blur the image, one thing I will show you that might make it easier is that you can actually compress images in PowerPoint. So you'll notice there's this option to compress picture. When you bring those stock photos from different websites or from pexels.com or wherever you get them from, they can be really, really way bigger, higher quality than you need. So you can actually compress the image. And I'm not going to apply delete cropped areas. And you usually get different options here, but there's only this one default option. So we're going to ignore that. I don't know why that's not showing me my options here, but you can adjust it. Apply only to this picture. Why won't let me crop it? Who knows? Or compress it. Whatever. We'll come back to that. You can compress your images there. Okay, so let's blur it out. I'm going to do a artistic effect. Here it is. And we're going to do a blur. And you can see it slightly blurred it out, but maybe I want it a little bit more blurred. I can increase the radius of the blur, whatever the radius means, and make it blurrier. Let's do like 15. So I can kind of still see that it's an office, if you will, but it's not so blurry that it's undistinguishable, all right? So there's my blurred out image. I'm going to use that in the background of my slide. And I'm going to leave it black and white because I'm going to do something cool with that. Now with this image, let's come back to this image here. I'm going to reset it. I don't want it black and white, so I'm going to bring it to the front. And I'm going to put it here. I'll make him a little bit larger. And let's say we wanted to remove the background from this image so that we can use him in our composition that we're designing here, right? Because when you're designing something, mixing and matching images and graphics and shapes, you're building a composition. I'm not really doing graphic design. I'm just moving shit around on the screen until it looks good. Get my drift? All right, so let's reset the picture. I can reset the picture here. And this is another great thing about PowerPoint as a graphic design tool is it's non-destructive, meaning I can make any changes and then reset the picture and it'll reset it to how it was, right? I don't have to worry about making changes that are going to ruin it. I'm gonna make it much smaller there. And let's bring this back in. And let's remove the background from this image. Now, if you go to picture format, there is the option over here to remove background. Now, if I click on this, what PowerPoint is going to do is it's going to analyze the image, and anything that it shows in purple here, it's going to want to remove, and it's doing this automatically. And it's always a best practice to find images that have a good delineation between the foreground and the background. And that's what it's trying to detect, but it's not always perfect. There's always going to be a need to correct it. So you'll see here, we're missing part of his arms. We want to keep those, and half of his head is gone, all of his hair, right? So you'll notice in my ribbon here, I have mark areas to remove, mark areas to keep. I can use those to adjust how it's removing the background. So we're going to start with marking areas to keep. And I'm going to just draw lines where I want to keep stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to draw kind of what you want to keep. And it's going to take a moment, and it's going to reanalyze, and it's going to update it, right? So let's try this again up here to get the rest of his hair. There we go. That looks good. And now we have this down here, so I'm going to draw here. All right, let's keep going. There we go. Now you'll see here, got rid of his collar. It's going to take a little finesse to get this right. Get that. There we go. That's pretty good. Let's zoom in here. Move this guy over here. Let's just get his shoulder there. Again, you could spend a lot of time working on this. That looks good. Let's zoom all the way back out. And let's just get the last part of his elbow here. All right, that's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for now, all right? Now, if there were parts of the background that I wanted to remove, I could mark areas to remove, and it will keep that out as well. But marking areas to keep on whatever you're focusing on is usually the best bet. So we'll keep changes there, and now I have this image of this guy with the background removed. Now, you'll notice I have all this extra space here on the left and right. I'm going to actually crop this image because I don't want all this extra space. So from the picture format option, you have the option to crop images. Now, I will tell you if you're ever cropping images that you're not removing the background on, you can crop to a specific aspect ratio, like a 1:1 or 2:3. I'll show you a cool technique that I've done with cropping to 1:1 here in a moment. In this case, I'm just going to select the crop option. And it's going to give me these black handles on the corners. And I'm just going to crop out all this extra space here on the left and on the right that I don't need. Oh, let me get that. There we go. And I'll just hit enter or click away. And now we have this cropped image. So I'm going to put him right about here. Make him a little larger. And maybe I'll put him a little bit off the slide because we have a little part of that image that's his elbows that's kind of missing. So I can crop that out too. Here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, whenever you're working with characters, like cutout characters like this, it's always my preference to make them a little bit larger. For example, if I go to the Insert tab and I do Picture and I do Stock Images, one of the cool things that is available in PowerPoint are cutout people. I don't know if a lot of people know this, right? You have all these different cutout people, and if you don't have all of the cutout people available to you in, say, Storyline, or you don't have an outside subscription, you can use all of these as well. So one of the things that I'm not a big fan of, let's put her on there, is when people use cutout people, but they put the full head to toe of the person. I just think it looks awkward. And so what I'm a big fan of is making them a little bit larger, maybe from the waist up or, from the stomach up. And it just, it allows you to focus on that person a little bit better. Nobody needs to see their legs and their feet more often than not, right? Okay, so we have an image in the background. We have an image in the foreground. What else should we talk about images? Last thing before I continue, I'll show you a cool technique that I've done with images in the past. I'm going to insert another photo from my stock images. Let's see. Let's Google professional. See what comes up. Let's see. Let's find one that, we'll just do this lady here. I'll insert her. And maybe you want to crop your image to a specific shape, right? Like maybe a circle. Maybe you're creating like an icon out of a person, right? So one of the things you can do with the crop, like I showed earlier, is you can crop to aspect ratio, and you can do 1:1. Now what's cool about this is I'm going to crop it 1:1 first, and I'm going to make it much bigger so her head is right in the middle of the image there, right? Let me zoom out here so I can really see it. And the reason why I'm cropping it 1:1 is because I'm going to, in a minute, crop it to a circle. And you want it to be a perfect circle in what I'm about to show you. You don't want it to be like a weird oval, right? So we've cropped it 1:1. Now let me make it smaller here. Let's say I wanted to use this image of her as part of an icon, right? Let me insert a shape. I'm going to insert a circle. I'm going to hold the Shift key as I draw this to keep a perfect circle, right? So if you want to keep a perfect square, perfect circle, hold Shift when you draw it. It'll be perfect. And let's say I want to put her in there and make it a perfect circle, right? I can do shape format. Let's do, or picture format. Where's my picture format tools? Picture format. We're going to crop to circle now. I can crop to a circle. And you see it makes a perfect circle, so I can put her on top of there. But let's remove the background too. So maybe it'll just be her head. Give it a moment to load. There we go. And see, it's cropping out her eyes, but you know, everything else is a little weird. So let's mark areas to keep. We're going to keep those eyes, right? This one might be a little harder, but we'll give it a try here. We're going to keep all of this like that. Let's see what happens with that. It's thinking, okay, keep going. Keep going. It's thinking, there we go. Oh, and then it's her teeth gone. You can have a lot of fun with this. Okay, we're almost there with her hair. Let's do this. I'm gonna mark all of this here. I'm just gonna draw it all, see what happens there when I do that. All right, it's almost good enough. It's not perfect, but I could keep playing around with it. Keep changes, right? And now I can layer her. Let's bring her to front. Layer her, and you can see how it's cropped. It's perfectly on that circle, right? Now you can see the edges around her hair are not all that great, right? So let's say, let's do this. Let's make the background on this shape format. We're going to do a shape fill of white, no outline. So you can change that there. And now you can really see how the edges on her hair are not perfect. This is where you can use the soften image feature. So I'll do picture format. And where is it? It's under picture effects. You have a couple different options. We'll play around with the shadows and a few others here in a moment. But we're going to do soften edges here. And I'm going to just do soft edge options so I have more control. And you'll see here, I can kind of very subtly soften the edges. You have to play around with it, but you can kind of get something that looks a little bit better. So that's how you can, you know, crop to a shape so that it can maybe fit into a circle like this. All right. I don't need that, so I'm going to delete that. Okay. The next thing I want to add here, so we talked about editing images. I could save off each of these images individually, but I want to keep building out my composition. So the next thing I want to show you is how we can add and edit shapes. All right. So just like you can add shapes, say in Adobe Illustrator to create custom graphics, you can do the same thing in PowerPoint. Here's my shapes. There's all sorts of different shapes, but what's cool about these shapes is that you can actually edit them beyond what they are by default. So for example, I'm just going to put a square here, okay? And I'm going to put that square just right about there. And, you know, it's a boring square, but let's do a shape fill of white and a shape fill of, or an outline fill or an outline of nothing, okay? And you'll see here that it wasn't exactly to the edge. So this is where I'm going to use my arrange tools. I'm going to go to shape format. I'm going to align to the right. It's going to align it to the right of the screen. We still see a little bit of that image popping out, but that's probably because this image is ever so slightly larger than my slide space. Let's fix that. Okay, there you go. Now that's a simple shape, right? Nothing special happening there. But if I go to my shape format option here, you'll notice there's this option for edit shape, and I can edit the points. And you'll see that the shape outline turns to red, and I have these black handles on each corner. And if I click on these, this gives these additional handles. They're called Bezier or Bezier curves. I've always struggled with that word. And I can adjust this shape to create my own custom shape, just like this, right? So if I wanted to create something more subtle like this, I can edit all of these. I can even add additional points. So I can add a point and move things around like that. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to just hit undo. I'll go home, undo, undo, and I can create a custom shape like that, right? So maybe I have that overlaid. Now, so we've added a custom shape. I'm going to come back to that here a little bit later because I want to show you how to create some custom icons, but I've edited a basic shape, added that to my slide. Now I want to do something here in the background, maybe with a color overlay, and do something fun with some gradient colors here, all right? So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert another shape here, and I'm going to have it fill up the entire slide space here, all right? It's going to cover everything, but you'll see what we're going to do here in a moment. And we have this basic shape here. It's not an exciting color, it's just the default blue. But what I like to do is I like to go sample colors off of the internet. And there's this really great website I use called flatUIcolors.com. And there's all sorts of really great color palettes here that you can choose from. Now what I like to do is I just like to take a screenshot of these and bring them into my project so I can sample them. So if I go back to PowerPoint, you can actually use PowerPoint as a screenshot tool. So I'll go to Insert, and you'll notice there's an option for Screenshot. And I'm going to do a screen clipping. And it's going to take a moment here. And now I can screen clip this, and it's going to put it right into my project. And now I can use this to select colors from this. I'm just using it as like a little reference. So let me show you how to use the eyedropper tool first. So if I select this shape here and I want to sample one of these colors, if you do shape fill, there's an option for an eyedropper here. And I can sample any colors here from this. So I'm just going to sample, let's do this blue color here. It's a subtle change from what it was. And I can, go back to the shape and do another eyedropper. Maybe I want it to be green. But in this case, what I really want to do is I want to give it a gradient. A gradient is when it transitions from one color to another, and there might be other colors in between there. The challenge with gradients is that they can get really ugly really quickly. And so the thing I recommend when you're creating gradients, gradient fills, is that subtlety is really the key here. Maybe 2 colors is good for a gradient. Let me show you how to do it. I'm going to do a shape fill, and I'm going to do a gradient fill. And I'm not going to use any of these built-in gradients. I'm going to do more gradients. And I'll do gradient fill. And you'll see here's a gradient that's applied. This is a gradient I actually used earlier. But sometimes it has more one stop on it. You can have a gradient with multiple stops like this, and you can change these colors, and you can see how it creates this gradient. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of these stops, and I'm going to start over and create my own custom gradient. So I have 2 colors here, and I'm going to use my eyedropper. And let's do from this dark blue. And I'll select my second color, do my eyedropper, and we'll do it to this green color, right? One color to another, all right? Now, I've gone ahead and sampled my colors. I'm going to move these out of the way because I don't need those right now. Let's go back up here. Let's continue editing our gradient. So let me select my shape again. And there's a couple different options for editing the gradient. So you can move these stops around. Let's say I want more blue. You can see how it adjusts the gradient that way. I can make it more green. If I wanted to add a third color, I can just click in there. And now if I wanted to, just for demonstration's sake, eyedropper, let's do this purple color. You can see you could create all these different colors. Now, once you add more than one color, that's when you start getting a little crazy. So I usually stick with 2 colors. So I'll remove this middle stop here. And the next thing I want to adjust is the angle. So this is the angle of the gradient. You'll notice as I click on this, it kind of starts twisting around, right? So maybe I want the blue in the top corner with some of the, let's go around this way, with some of the green peeking through. So we'll do something like that, right? Okay, very cool. Now, the cool thing you can do is that you can actually adjust the transparency of these colors. So maybe I want to make the blue a little bit more transparent. So I can click on it and adjust the transparency, and watch what happens when I do that. See that background starting to peek through? And you create this overlaid effect. Now, I'm not going to stop here. Let's do 25% transparent. Now, what do we have here? Okay, we have a background image in the background that I made black and white, and we blurred it out. Then we added a character, and then we have this shape on the top. Now, what if I want this gradient color to be behind my white shape and be behind my character? So it's sitting on top of the blurred image. How might I do that? Well, and before I do that, actually, let me turn off the outline color on my shape. I don't need that, so no outline. Okay. How I would do this, how I used to do this, is I would right-click and send to back, right? Send to back. But now it's in the way back, so now I'll try to click on this image and send that to the back, right? And there it is. Great. That worked, but that took a lot of work, right? And that's also frustrating if, let's say I needed to go back and edit that background image that's way in the back. How would I do that? Well, I don't know if anyone's ever done this before, the little cycling game where you go right-click, send to back. Okay, now let's send this to back. So now I'll send this to back. Oh, and now there's my image, right? Now I can fix it, and now I got to do that all over again. Let's right-click, send to back, and now it's all back to the way it was. I don't know if anyone else has done this either. There's another way I've done this where you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, start counting where things are, so you know exactly what pixels it's supposed to be in, and then count until it's all the way back, right? Well, there's actually a better way that you can edit and adjust the stacking order of objects on your slides in PowerPoint. And it's a feature that's hidden in plain sight. It's probably the most powerful feature that nobody knows about in PowerPoint, and it's called the selection pane. Now, before I show you how to access the selection pane, let me mention why it's such a powerful option and a powerful tool for you. For those of you familiar with, say, Storyline or with Captivate or even Camtasia or any timeline-based authoring tool, you know how you have in the timeline, you can adjust the stacking and the visibility of different items, and you can arrange them and turn off the visibility so you can edit things in the background, right? You can do the exact same thing in PowerPoint. So I'm going to go back to PowerPoint here, and to access my selection pane, from the Home tab in the ribbon, I'm going to select the Arrange dropdown, and you'll see here it's the selection pane. It's hidden. And now I have my selection pane. Now what's cool about the selection pane, for those of you not familiar with why you would want this, and let me delete this image here, I don't need that anymore. You can see my selection pane has 4 items. Each item represents the different items on my slide area. And you'll see these little icons, these are eyeballs. So I can actually toggle on and off the visibility individually of items. So I can turn off that shape, I can turn off the character, I can turn off that gradient, I can turn off everything, show all, hide all, I can do all of that there. I can even rename items in my selection pane. So let's say I wanted to rename this as my white shape. I want to rename this as my character. And if I want to rename this as my gradient, and then I can rename this as my background image. Okay, very cool. I can also adjust the stacking order here. So let's say I wanted to move my character in front of this white shape, right? I could do the right click, send to back, bring to front, right? Or I could just click on the character and bring him to the front just like that. Maybe I want to create this overlapped kind of look and feel, okay? Very cool. Let's say I wanted to group the gradient image in the background with the background image, the blurred image. Well, I can hide both of these, use Shift to select them both, right? Hold Shift to select them both, or maybe not. Control. There we go. And now I can right-click, group these items, and you see it shows the group. And I can rename this and call this my background. Okay? And then show all, and now we have everything back up here. Super, super, super cool. The selection pane is amazing. Now, if you happen to be using PowerPoint on a Mac, the selection pane, I don't know if it exists. Yes, of course it exists, but you can do something way cooler on the Mac version of PowerPoint. Let me show you how. Let me open up PowerPoint. I have this PowerPoint slide here. Same thing as just as you would have on the Windows side. Do Arrange. We have our selection pane. You can see all of these items here. Hide all, show all of that exists. There's something way cooler you can do here. So if I click on something, right-click, you'll see there's this option to reorder overlapping objects or reorder objects. If I click on this, look what it does. It creates this 3D representation of all of the items on my screen. And so I can reorder any individual item here. So let's say I wanted to take my background and bring it all the way to the foreground, right? You can see how each item is stacked. Now if I click OK, it's going to recollapse it, and now it's in the foreground. And if I right-click, reorder overlapping objects, take this first one, send it all the way to the back, physically send it to the back, click OK. Hey, now it's in the background. So that's how you can use the stacking order or edit the stacking order in PowerPoint on a Mac. And the selection pane exists both on the Mac version of PowerPoint and, of course, the Windows version of PowerPoint. All right. Okay, so what have we done so far? So we talked about editing photos, we've removed the background from a character, we created a gradient color fill, we've added this little wavy thing and edited the shape. Let's do a couple of finishing touches before I add some text here, all right? Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to add some drop shadows. And drop shadows are really nice because they create a sense of depth, if you will, right? It highlights items in the foreground, and it shows it makes things feel more stacked in real space, right? Because in real life, light casts shadows, right? Again, just like with gradients, drop shadows, when used improperly, are very obvious and distracting. So the key to creating good drop shadows is subtlety, all right? So let's say I wanted to add a drop shadow to my character here. So I'm going to do picture format, and this works on any picture or shape in PowerPoint. And I'm going to do picture effects, and you'll see there's the option for shadow. Now here's what I don't ever do. I don't ever use any of these built-in shadow options. I always go down here to shadow options so I can have complete control over how I'm applying the shadow. And you can see I can adjust the transparency, size, blur, angle, distance, and even the color of my shadow. So if I wanted to give it like a glow, and there is an option for glows, but I could do that here as well. So I am going to start with a preset though. I'll start with a preset, and you can see it created this really obvious dark halo shadow around the character. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with the blur and the size and the transparency to create a really subtle drop shadow. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size a little bit. Let's make it, like 104, just a couple, percentages higher. And we're going to increase the blur quite a bit. And you'll see as I do this, it's making the drop shadow way blurrier, which is making it more subtle. So I'm going to make it, let's go with 35 points. Now it's still pretty obvious, especially when you look down here on the elbow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the transparency. And as I increase it, it's going to become more transparent. And let's go with, say, 75% transparent, right? Let's click away. I'm pretty good with that. It creates a sense of depth, but it's not obvious. Let's do the same thing with this shape here. Let's do a drop shadow, shape format. We're going to do shape effects, shadow. I'll just do shadow options. And I'm going to apply my default one here in the middle. And you'll see it applies that ugly halo again. And I'm just going to increase the size. We'll do like 104. And then we're going to increase the blurriness. Make it really blurry. Let's do 35 again. And the transparency, bring that up too. We'll do 75 as well. So the same settings as before. Now, if I change the color, you'll kind of see, I don't know if it makes sense. It kind of gives an orange glow. I don't want that in this case, of course. So I'm going to just keep it black. You can create that type of effect. Okay, very cool. So we've created kind of this cool slide layout. Now, if I wanted to reverse this or do anything, one of the other things you can do is picture format. I'm just going to show a couple of tips here. I can reflect him, flip him horizontally. I like that, kind of like he's up against it a little bit. Let's make this a little bit bigger so I can close in on this gap here. And maybe make him a little larger to fill in some of this area. Or I could flip this around and do everything. Actually, I'm going to flip him back. I think it looks better. Where's that? Where's my flipping? Arrange. Rotate, flip horizontally. There we go. Yeah, I like that. Now let's add some text. I want to show you some cool things you can do with text in PowerPoint while we're talking about colors and gradients. I'm going to add a text box here, and maybe here is my cool header. I'll just type Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum, we'll come back to Lorem Ipsum here in a moment. Lorem Ipsum is just placeholder text. That's what I typed in there. It looks like Italian, but I promise you it's not. And what I'm going to do here, we all know how to change fonts and all of that stuff. I'm going to show you how you can apply gradients to text. So maybe I want the same gradient in the background on my text, but let's choose a nice big, bold, chunky font, which looks best with something like this, right? Let's do, I guess spend all days looking at my font library here. Oh gosh. You know what we're going to do? We're going to do Roboto. Roboto's a good one. Let's find Roboto. Where is that? Here we go. We're going to do Roboto Black. All right, and let's do this. I can adjust the kerning or the letter spacing. I don't always get those two confused. Let's make it a little looser. I'm going to make it all caps. This is another thing you can do. You can change the cap of it. There we go. Or the casing of it. And I actually don't like that font. See, this is me going into my fonts. Let's do this one. Can I make that even bolder? No, but we'll make it a little bit larger. Okay, so I've gone ahead and applied some font styling. Nothing big there, right? But if I go in here to my font colors, you'll see there's not a lot of options. Even if I click more colors here, you just get, the standard box, dialog box here. But if you right click and do format shape, and then come to text options here, now I can change the way the text fills. So I'm going to do a gradient fill, and it applied the same gradient right there. And I could adjust it as need be if I wanted to adjust the transparency, all of that stuff. I could do that here as well. I'm not going to have it transparent. I'm just going to have it be the exact same gradient there. And if I keep adding text, Lorem Ipsum, Dular, Solet, I'm just making words up, right? You can see how it applies that gradient across that text, which is super, super cool. And it's not just each character, it's applying it across the entire box of text, which is super, super cool. All right, the next thing I want to show you, this is a nice tip while we're talking about placeholder text, Lorem Ipsum. You can actually generate Lorem Ipsum directly in PowerPoint. I used to do this. I'd go to a website that generated Lorem Ipsum and I'd copy and paste it, but you can actually generate it directly in PowerPoint. And this tip also works in Storyline. I did a webinar on Articulate Storyline Tips and Tricks where I showed this. So I'm going to add a text box here. And let's say I wanted to generate some Lorem Ipsum text. The way that you do that is you do equal Lorem, open parentheses, close parentheses. Now, before I continue, in between those two parentheses signs, you insert a number. And whatever number you put in there, it will generate that many paragraphs of Lorem Ipsum text. So I'm going to put like 3. Oops, hit enter. And now I have 3 paragraphs of Lorem Ipsum text automatically generated. And of course, now I can stylize this however I want. Maybe we'll do, some sort of lighter text style there for my font. All right, very cool. So what did we talk about? We talked about editing images, creating custom shapes, doing gradients, doing all sorts of really cool things, generating Lorem Ipsum text. There's a lot you can do just directly in PowerPoint. And like I said, I can save off each of these images separately and bring them directly into Storyline or whatever tool I might be using. Okay, so we talked about editing images, we removed backgrounds, we did all of that. Let's talk about creating custom graphics or editing custom graphics in PowerPoint. Now, before I continue, I have to tell you there's a bit of a misconception about what e-learning designers actually do when it comes to creating graphics. Most e-learning designers, not all, but most rarely create their own custom graphics. I don't create my own custom graphics. I go source existing graphics and then I edit them to fit my needs. So the extent at which I'm going to show you how to create your own custom graphics are going to be icons. So we'll start there, but then I'm going to show you how to edit your own graphics that you can pull off the internet. So I'm going to create a new slide here. And the great thing about icons is that most icons are simple shapes that you combine together. And icons are awesome because they have universal meaning, typically, across cultures and languages. And you can assign meaning to them. You can tell a learner what an icon means, and they'll adopt that meaning in the design of whatever it is that you're creating. Now, years ago, as a hobby project, I created this website called PowerPointIcons.com. And at the time, I was hoping to create a library of different graphic assets that people could download from PowerPoint. I just didn't have the time to commit to it. But these are all graphics that I created directly in PowerPoint. I'll look at these science icons here, and I'll give it a moment to open. It's a little slow. I'll close this download dialog window here. Let's try that again. There we go. And you can see these are all graphics and icons that I created directly in PowerPoint. So let's say I wanted to create, let's go back to the downloads. Let's find a different one. Let's say I wanted to create these gamification icons, right? Like this badge icon here. I like that badge icon. Let's say I wanted to create this badge icon. So I'm going to come back to PowerPoint here, and I'm going to start with a basic circle, right? So I'm going to insert a shape, and we're going to do a circle here. And I'm going to hold Shift. And actually, before I continue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a screenshot of it so I can copy it. Let's open up that website in the background, come back to PowerPoint, and now do a screenshot. Do a screen clipping. Let's see if I can find it there. Here we go. And we'll do my screen clipping of it. And I can use this as a reference for the colors and the design, right? This is just simple shapes. So I'm going to start with the circles. Let's do the base of the icon, which is this black and this yellow. So let's start with that yellow. I'm going to do shape format, and let's turn off the outline, no outline. And for the shape fill, I'm going to select my eyedropper, and we'll select this yellowy gold color there. Great. Let's do the black color there in the middle. So I'm going to copy and paste this and do shape format, shape fill, eyedropper, and select that there. And we're going to do one more for that background. I'm going to use this dark orange here. Shape format, shape fill, eyedropper. We'll eyedropper that. All right, so we have all of the different colors and shapes for the foundation of our icon. All right, let's move this guy out of the way here. I'm going to make this black a little bit smaller. Hold Shift. I'm going to make it ever so slightly smaller. And I'm going to use my align tools to make it perfect. So I'm going to select both of these. And the arrange and align tools are very, very powerful because they allow you to make sure things are pixel perfect in terms of how they're laid out. So we have different tools here. We have align to the left, align to the center, align to the right, top, middle, and bottom. This is going to change how you align it. So I'm going to align it to the center. So you'll see they line up like this. And then I'm going to do arrange, align to the middle, which will make them align like this. We'll look at the distribution tools later. Okay, so I got that. Now this is on top, so I'm going to send this to the back. And for this, I'm going to align these all to the center of each other like this. So align the center. And this is just going to go, I'm going to move it up here just so off center. So it makes it almost gives it like a coin effect. Like it's almost 3D, right? 3 circles. That's all I did. 3 circles, 3 different colors. All right, so let's do the actual badge here in the middle. This is where we can edit our custom shapes, right? So I'm going to insert a shape, and I usually start with some shapes so I can edit it. I start with a shape that's similar to what I'm trying to create, and then I can edit it to be what I want. Now in this instance, I like this one here. I don't know what it's called. It's called a plaque. It's kind of a plaque, right? I'll go ahead and click on add that. I'm going to draw it here, and it's, kind of close to what I'm doing here, but we're going to use our shape format, edit shape, and edit points, just like we did earlier. You see all of my different points. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete the ones I don't need. So I'm going to right click, delete point, move this one here to the middle, and I don't need these other two. So I'm going to right click, delete point, right click, delete point. And now we have kind of a diamond, if you will, right? But if I click on this, I can start adjusting how it looks. And it's not going to be 100%, perfect, but I can get pretty close. And now I'll click away. Now I have something that looks like my badge, right? And you see there's 3 different colors. It's the same thing. It's just 3 different ones made a little bit smaller than each one. So let's make this bigger so I can sample more of those colors here. So we're going to start with the background. So I'll shape format. We're going to turn off the outline. Don't need that. Shape fill. I'll use my eyedropper. And I'm just going to eyedropper that. It's close enough. And let's do another one. I'm going to make it ever so slightly smaller. And let's do shape fill. And that's just white, so I'll just select white. And then I'll do copy and paste that, make this one a little bit smaller, and we'll make it orange, right? And you'll see that PowerPoint actually remembers the colors, so I can just select it there. Now, again, I'm going to use my align tools. I'm going to still have to adjust it, but I'm just going to arrange, align to center, arrange, align to middle, and there you go. Now, my orange thing in the background that made it look 3D, that went in the middle as well. So this is where I can use my selection pane and quickly... selection pane is... There we go. Well, what's going on here? Oh, it's being a little glitchy. Okay, that's no worries. Let's do hide all, show all. It's showing me the selection pane for a slide I am not even on. Yeah, let's just save this. I'm going to save it to my desktop. More locations. Saving is always so freaking confusing sometimes. This PC. We're going to save. Where am I going to save it? Where can I save it? New folder? No. More options. Oh my gosh, that took forever to get there. I don't want to lose anything, so let's save that off. Okay. It's saving. We'll give it a moment. Okay, let's try this again. My selection pane. I don't know why it's glitching. You know what? Let's do this. Let's just kill PowerPoint and open it back up. That'll probably fix it. Beauty of technology, right? All right. Yes, welcome back. I am back. Arrange. Selection pane. Hey, there we go. Don't know what was going on there. Now I can select it and just kind of move it there. It took a minute to get there. Sometimes you have to quit programs and restart them, right? Okay, so the stars. Let's do the stars. Those are going to be easy. Let's go to shapes. And what kind of star do I want to insert? Hey, there's a star that works perfectly. I'll just draw that there. Make it white. White fill. No outline. And I could duplicate that. We'll just do 2 for now. Make this one a little larger. And there we've created an icon, right? Now, if I were to group this, let's move that guy out of the way. I can group this, right click, group it, and I can save this off. Now, there's a couple different ways you can save off these images. I already showed that a little bit earlier, but if I right click and do save as a picture, when you're creating custom graphics like this, custom shapes, illustrations, of course you could save it as a PNG, which is going to be great because it's going to have that transparent background. But if you have the option to save it as a scalable vector graphic, it's going to save it like a vector graphic. And now, if you use Storyline, I don't know if this is true for Captivate or other tools, but in Storyline, you can actually insert scalable vector graphics. The beauty of scalable vector graphics is that they're infinitely scalable. They're treated like vector graphics. So I'm just going to call this my badge icon. Pretend I'm creating something that's gamified, right? I'll save it as my vector graphic. Now, if I come to Storyline, and I go to Insert, Picture from File, go to my desktop here, badge icons. It doesn't show it. I don't know why it doesn't show the preview. It doesn't matter. Click Open. There is my scalable vector graphic. And no matter how big I make this, it will maintain its quality. Now, unfortunately, currently, you can't edit these in Storyline, but that's why you have PowerPoint. You can edit them in PowerPoint and then bring them back into Storyline. Okay, we're going to come back to this because I'm going to show you some other cool things real quickly. The final thing I want to show you before we move on, I'm going to duplicate this entire icon, and let's just move it over here, and I'm going to ungroup it. There might be times where you want to use text as an icon, like a text symbol, right? Let's say you're creating like a question mark icon. That can be a bit of an issue. And what I've seen people do in the past, let me just insert some text, and I'm going to just draw and type in a question mark. Nothing special, right? And what I've seen people do is they'll insert text, and then they'll just make the text box really big, or the text within it a really, 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 really big font like this. Make it a little bit smaller, and we'll do the same kind of font. We'll do, this bold font, right? And I'll center it, and they'll make it white so we can see it on top of this, and then they'll put it here. We'll make it a little bit larger, right? And say, hey, I have an icon, right? The problem when you do this, if I zoom out here, and I'm going to move this guy way out there, I'm going to group all of this here. So I'm going to select all of this and group it. The problem when you do that is it doesn't work when you scale it. So if I were to make this smaller, you see how it keeps the font size the same? Well, that's because it's text. It's treated as font. Or if I make it bigger, the font gets smaller because it's still the same size. It doesn't scale relative to everything else that you're scaling. But what you can do is you can actually convert text or any sort of symbol like that into a shape in PowerPoint. Let me show you how to do it. I'm going to show you a couple ways I use this. So let me ungroup this if I can select it. So right click. Oh, click it on it again. It's being slow. There we go. Right click, group, ungroup. Okay. So now that I've ungrouped it, I'm going to actually move my question mark over. Oops. Let's close out my selection pane, move in here a little bit closer. I'm going to move my question mark over here. And so it's easier to see. I'm going to change the font color to say black, right? And we can move this series of shapes for my icon. If I can select them, we can group these back up. Group, group, okay. Now if I want to convert this into a shape, I need another shape here. So watch as I do this. I'm going to insert a shape, and I'm going to put it over this question mark here. And I'm going to actually send it behind the question mark. So I'm going to right click, send it back, and I'm going to hold shift and select both of these items. So both the shape and the question mark are selected. And for my shape format tab, I'm actually going to merge shapes, and this is where you can combine shapes, but I'm going to do the fragment, which almost treats it like a hole punch. It's going to punch right through it. So I do fragment shape, and you can kind of see that question mark there. If I move this out of the way, delete it, now I have two shapes created from that text icon. So I can right click, group, and group it. And now it's treated like any other shape. I can give it a color of white, put it right here. And if I were to select both of these, I can group these. And now I have a vector graphic, a scalable vector graphic of that text, all right? Now let me show you another way that I do this. Let me get rid of this item here. And oops, that's not the one I wanted to get rid of. This is the one I wanted to get rid of. And this one, I'll get rid of that. The other way that I do this is I'm going to insert another text box. And let's insert a symbol. How do I insert a symbol? Why am I not seeing my symbol? Let's try this again. Insert text box. and insert symbol. Why is it not happening? I don't know. Why can I not do symbols? You know what? Let's type something. Text. Oh, there we go. I had to type something. Of course, because that makes sense. Now I'll do symbol. And I can do, let's do my font. Let's do like wingdings or something crazy like that, right? Let's say there's some icon in here. I don't know. Let's do something fun. Let's do, we'll do the checkbox. Why not? Okay. I've inserted that. Get rid of that text here. Oh, no, that's not what I meant to do. Now I do it. And we'll make this much larger. Increase the font size. And just as I did before, I'm going to insert another shape. Square here. I'll put that here. I'm going to send it to the back. And I'm going to select my text and my shape. Do shape format, merge shapes, and I'm going to fragment it. It's going to treat it like a hole punch. Fragment. And then I'll delete the stuff I don't need. I don't need the outside. I don't need the inside. And now I have a shape that I can give a fill color, turn off the outline. And now I have this white checkmark shape, which I should bring to the front. See if I can see it there. Oops. Having fun. There we go. There's my check mark. All right. Some other ways that you can use the merge shape, you can combine a couple of different shapes. So for example, if I wanted to, who knows, right? Maybe I'm trying to create like a puzzle piece, right? I'll draw a square here and let's insert another shape and do a circle here on top of this right there. And then I want to merge those together. I can do shape format. And why can I not merge those? Who knows why? There we go. Now I can. It's being glitchy today. I can make it a union, and now they're one shape. Or I can insert another shape. Let's do another circle here. Create a circle and select both of these. And don't know why it's not working the first time, but now it works the second time because that makes sense. And I can subtract. Let's see which one's the right one. Combine. In this case, I usually do fragment. And then I just delete the stuff I don't need. And now I've created like, kind of like a puzzle piece. You get where I'm going with that, right? All right, so that's how you can create custom icons in PowerPoint. And you could save them off as SVGs and use in your project. Now, the final thing I want to show you is how you can edit other types of scalable vector graphics directly in PowerPoint. Graphics that you would otherwise probably have to use a tool like Adobe Illustrator to edit. And if you don't have Adobe Illustrator or you're intimidated by it, that's okay. You might be able to accomplish this directly in PowerPoint. Now, one of the tools, resources I use quite frequently is Envato Elements. Now, Envato Elements is a paid service. I don't get paid by them. I don't have any sort of relationship with them. I just love this service. And this is where I get like 90% of my e-learning graphics. And it's pretty cheap. You can get it for a couple bucks a month. I think at the most it's like 20 bucks a month, but you can get different discounts. And it's just a great stock graphic, photo, video, font, audio website. And what I love about Envato Elements is that unlike other stock asset websites where you have to buy credits and how you use an image gets exponentially more expensive and you can only use it once, with Envato Elements, you can download as many graphics as you want for that flat monthly rate, as many as you want. So you have access to essentially everything, all right? And what I oftentimes do is I'll come in here, I'll go to the home page, and you might search something like Office, right? And there's going to be all sorts of assets. They have photos, stock videos, graphic templates, sound effects, 3D images and graphics, which is cool, presentation templates, and of course, graphics here. And let's say I wanted to use this graphic here in an e-learning course. I needed to edit it, right? I couldn't just use it as is. Maybe I needed to change the color, or I wanted to remove an element of it, like the background or this weird plant, or whatever the case might be, right? What you want to look for is whether or not it supports SVG, Scalable Vector Graphic. And I'll show you a couple of other ones. Here's that one I had earlier. Here's some different graphics. They say it has SVG. Anything that has SVG, you can edit in PowerPoint, right? And that's true for icons and different graphics. So what I'm going to do is I've already downloaded this graphic. So I would just download it, but I've already gone ahead and done that. And I'm going to insert picture from file, my stock images. Nope, not stock images, sorry. Let's close that, give that a moment. Made it think too hard. Picture from this device. It's thinking. I have a lot going on my computer, so it's being a little slower than normal. We'll go to my downloads. And here is my workflow image. And when you download these, you're going to get all sorts of different images. But this one, it doesn't say it, but that's the SVG. And I think if you hover over it, what does it say? It says a Microsoft Edge HTML document, whatever the heck that means. I'm just going to insert it. Give it a moment. Hey, and there's my SVG. Now, if you want to edit this SVG, and we're going to turn off these design ideas, we don't need those. All you have to do is right-click and say Convert to Shape. And what that's going to do is it's going to convert it into a series of editable shapes directly in PowerPoint. And now, if I were to go to my selection pane, we'll see if it works this time. There we go. We can see all of these different items. And I can ungroup this. Group, ungroup. And it's going to be overwhelming. It's a lot of different shapes. But if you need to come in here, maybe change this background color, I can come in here and maybe make it, I don't know, green or blue. I can adjust the transparency of it. Maybe I want to make it a little bit transparent. I'll format the shape and we'll do a fill color. And I can increase the transparency so it gets that similar look that it had before, right? Maybe I want to make this a different color as well. I'll make that green, right? Maybe that needs to be transparent as well, because I think it was before. Who knows, right? I don't know. You can play around with it, right? You can edit all of this directly in PowerPoint. Now, if I wanted to use this, let's say in Storyline, right? If I edit my graphic, maybe I don't need the plant, right? I can start deleting all the different plant stuff in here. It's going to have all sorts of weird shapes, but I'll just delete them all. Oh, you know what? I should zoom in when I do this to make sure I'm clicking on the right things. There we go. Delete the plants. We're trying here. There we go. Almost there. Almost there. Get rid of that. I should have chosen something simpler to delete, but you get my point. All right. Now I can just regroup this. Right click, group. All right. And now I can save this off, just as I did before. Save as picture. I'm going to save it as a scalable vector graphic. We'll call this my office. Save it off. Okay, now if I go to Storyline, or whatever tool I might be using, another tool doesn't have to be Storyline, but if you're using Storyline, insert a picture from file. We'll find our scalable vector graphic on our desktop, insert that, and there you go. Now I have that directly in Storyline, which I edited in PowerPoint. Unfortunately, right now, like I said earlier, you can't edit these in Storyline 2. You can edit them in PowerPoint. And it's scalable vector, so I can make it as large or small as I need, and it will not affect the quality of the image. Another great example of this that I use frequently, let's do a new slide here. Delete the placeholder, don't need that stuff. If I go back here, there's another website I use, undraw.co. These offer free, simple graphics. These are all scalable vectors. So if I wanted to say download this SVG, download that, I can bring that into PowerPoint, insert picture from this device. Let's find our picture here. Where is it? It's probably that one. No, it's going to be back in my downloads folder. Downloads. Here it is. Insert that. Very cool. Right click. I hate these design ideas pop-ups, but you know, they might be helpful to other people. Right click, convert to shape, and now they're all individual shapes. And so let's say, again, I needed to change the color of some items. Maybe I want to make her shirt, you know, I don't know, orange. I want to change this to orange. We'll make that orange. Maybe I want to make this, whatever that is, orange. Maybe whatever she's holding there, orange. Maybe I wanted to delete the plant. You know, I don't know why plants are in everything, but we can delete that. And I've edited a graphic. And again, just as I did before, group it. Save it off as a picture. Make sure I select scalable vector graphic as the file type. Put this on my desktop, because that makes more sense so it doesn't get lost in my files. And just as I did before, I can bring this into Storyline or whatever tool I might be using. The biggest challenge is trying to figure out what is the name of it. It's probably that one. There we go. Now I have my scalable vector graphic inserted into Storyline that I edited in PowerPoint. So Invatsu Elements, great resource. Undraw.co, there's a bunch of other other websites just like these where you can get these types of graphics. All right, so as we wrap up here, final couple things I want to show you in PowerPoint. Let's put in one more slide, new slide. Delete this. I want to show some of the other assets available to you if you're using Microsoft Office 365. So if I go to Insert and I do icons, there's all sorts of icons you can insert along with the other stock photos. These are great if you want some more modern icons. Again, these operate just like scalable vector graphics, so you can change the color and layer them and edit them as needed. I've used tons of these. I showed you the cutout people earlier, so if you don't have access to cutout people but you need some characters, there are some in here as well. They do have stickers. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the stickers because they're very reminiscent of, bad clip art, but who knows what you might be creating, right? There's also stock video. There's all sorts of interesting stock videos in here, ones that are just like weird backgrounds or other things happening that you could use. There's also illustrations, so they have some more complex icons, if you will. These are all also scalable vector graphics, so if I insert, say, this icon or this illustration, just as I did before, I can convert to shape, turn off the close ideas, and of course I can change the color of this as needed to fit my design needs, right? Maybe I want to make it blue, and then save that off. If I add another new slide and go back to inserting some stock stuff, one of the other cool things that I've discovered that I did not know was there until just recently, because I think it's pretty new, if I go back and insert stock images, just as I was doing before, there's also cartoon people. And these cartoon people are pretty freaking cool, if I do say so myself. They're like modern cartoon people. That's what they are. But what I love about them is that you can mix and match the heads and the bodies and the faces to create your own custom cartoon people. So for example, if I wanted to insert, let's make this easier on myself. Let's do upper body, right? It's gonna take a moment. Let's say I like this person. I'll insert that. It'll add that to my slide, and then I can go insert, and of course we'll close out that. We'll insert picture from stock images, and now if I go back to the cartoon people, give it a moment here to load, and maybe we want to do heads. I can select a different head. Let's do, I don't know, this one's cool. We'll insert that, and I can position that head, right there. That's perfect. Insert another picture from my stock images, and I will go to cartoon people once more, and we're gonna do a face, and we're gonna do a crazy face. Why not? Let's have fun. There's a crazy face, and put it right there, and we'll add it right there. Look at that. Okay, let me zoom in there so we can actually make it look good. I'm sure not every face and head will go together, because obviously this one's having the eye covered, but we'll kind of get it there. There we go. That looks kind of cool, right? Look how cool is that? I mean, you can do some pretty fun stuff with that. So I'm going to group this. Group. I could convert to shape when they're all individual, and then save that off as a SVG, right? So there's so many options in PowerPoint for you to create some really cool stuff. We didn't even scratch the surface talking about like animations. There's a lot we can do there with the morph transition and all sorts of stuff. And there's probably things I didn't even think of that I probably wanted to mention during today's session. So thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to spend some time getting familiar with PowerPoint. It's a tool that you probably have access to, and it's a tool that you already know how to use. You just really need to play with it and start figuring out different creative ways that you can use it for graphic design. And I promise it's a great way to help elevate your technical skills with graphic design and maybe work towards more advanced tools like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. So I want to thank you so much for attending today's how-to workshop. Again, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell button so that you can get alerted the next time I host an event like this. And you can check out all of my live events with the links down in the description. So thank you so much for coming, and have a great day. Bye.